This is Major General Fairchild. Very rare to see a female general, and she was born here in Poseyville, Indiana, and her maiden name was East, E-A-S-T. She is here visiting us at the Evansville Wartime Museum, and this is a rare thing for us to have this. Okay, General Fairchild, can you just tell us why, where you were born, your birth date, mom and dad's name, brothers and sisters, and what grade school and high school?
My name is Verna Fairchild. I was born and raised in Poseyville, Indiana. I was born June 11, 1941. I have a sister that still lives in Evansville, Sarah Paul, lives on Oak Hill Road. She was at the luncheon with me today. I have a brother still living, Glenn East, who's now also in Florida and has been for like 30 years. I have an older sister who died in 1995, Ruth Richardson. My parents were James and Fern East of Poseville. They both, I think, grew up in that area.
When were they born and what did they do for a living?
My dad worked for the Indiana Highway Department, and my mother was, she worked part-time at the post office when I was in high school, or actually after I left high school. And my dad died in 1964, and then my mother moved to Evansville, and she'd spend her winters in Florida. My older sister lived in Florida, and my brother lived in Florida, so she would spend her winters in Florida. And I moved to St. Augustine, Florida. I live at the World Golf Village. I moved about a year and a half ago.
Okay, and your father, about when did he die, and when were they born, about your mom and dad?
He was 54 and died in 1964. And my mother was, she died, I think she was 93, and she lived in Evansville at the time. She was at one of the nursing homes here. We had her in a condo on Washington Avenue for years, but we were afraid she was going to go out to the busy street and get run over, so we moved her to a nursing home, and she was there about 5 years, I guess, before she died.
And she raised 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls, or?
1 boy and 3 girls.
1 boy and 3 girls. That's the same as me. 1 boy, 3 girls. So that boy didn't have a chance.
You're right.
So you went to what grade school and what high school?
I went to Poseville grade school and high school. I was in the last graduating class from Robb Township High School, which was at Poseville.
Wow. Huh. So the last graduating class of where?
Poseville. It was called Robb Township High School.
In Poseyville. Was it in Poseyville City or North?
In Poseville.
In Poseyville, okay. Did you know Doug Patton and some of the Burketts from there?
Name sounds familiar.
Yeah. So you left there, and then where'd you go, General?
I went to Deaconess School of Nursing, which was, at that time, was 3 years, and worked at Deaconess for about 9 years.
So in the 50s, mid-50s, you were working at Deaconess, 58 or 57 to 60, something like that?
At Deaconess, I was there from 59 to 71.
Okay, so a good 12 years. Okay, and then, so that was the downtown campus called the Midtown campus now, right at Mary Street and,
Yes.
and Columbia.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where I was born there. That's a big hospital. There were 2 big hospitals there, but that's a very big one. Okay, so then after you left there in 71, what did you do?
I got married and moved to Frankfort, Kentucky. And then I was in the Guard and the Air Force Reserve.
National Guard and Air Force Reserve, all during nursing school?
No, after I graduated.
So about 62 you started being in?
68.
68. And you joined up in Evansville? Did you sign up on the west side at the Naval Reserve Station or downtown, or did you go to another city to sign up?
I went to the Air Reserve Base in Columbus, Indiana.
Okay. that wasn't Atterbury? I think Atterbury's in another
It's
city.
east of Atterbury, I think.
Yeah, Columbus, and
Northeast.
they got a lot of cadets there, so that's a big air base. So you signed up there probably in '68. How old were you then? You're 27 years of age.
Yes.
Okay, and
I got
then
a direct commission as a first lieutenant. I never was a second lieutenant. I
so
got a direct commission as first lieutenant because by that time I had a bachelor's degree and was 27. So
and a lot of experience. That's equivalent to a lieutenant in the Navy, I believe.
Right.
No, it's one below that. You become a captain next, so you're a lieutenant JG in the Navy. All right, so you started right there because you had a lot of experience and a lot of education. And were you in the nursing corps? Or just
yes,
reserve?
and just the reserve. I was charge nurse of the hospital.
Okay. So then you joined that up and said to your husband in Frankfurt, was he military or not?
He was commander of the civil engineering squadron when I joined the hospital
In Frankfurt?
in Columbus,
Oh,
Indiana.
and you lived in Columbus for a while?
No, I lived in Frankfurt.
In Frankfurt, I see. Okay, so then after that, tell us what you did.
I was, we transferred to the Kentucky Air Guard and I was charge nurse there. Then was the first female and nurse to command a tactical hospital. I was appointed commander and 2 weeks later we went to Germany to participate in NATO exercises.
What year was that? And what city were you in charge of the hospital?
Louisville.
Louisville, so you're in charge of the hospital. At a young age, probably at 35,
Thereabouts.
in that range, and then you went over to NATO exercise in Europe, I see. Okay, tell me what happened after that, General.
Let's see, I was hospital commander. Then I was appointed as, when I was lieutenant colonel, appointed as, I'll take that back. I was going to retire as a full colonel, and one of the generals from Washington said, well, we're working on something for you, and I didn't know what he was talking about. And I was appointed as the Assistant Adjutant General for Air for Kentucky Air Guard. We flew C-130s, and that's probably the best job I had. I was
What
that-
year is that about, General? In the range, late 80s, early 90s?
95.
95, yes.
Thereabouts, and in 90s, then while I was Assistant Adjutant General for Air for Kentucky, I still sat on some boards in Washington, because I was obviously in the minority. There were 2 females in the Air Guard that were 2 years older and outranked me at the time, so, but they neither one had been, one was commander of a clinic, hospital clinic.
Okay, we're continuing to interview with Verna East Fairchild, Major General, United States
Air Force,
Air Force,
retired.
retired. Now, we were just talking about her experiences in the 90s. There is a famous person from Evansville, Henderson area named, and talk about him and how you know him.
General Conway was the wing commander when I transferred to the Kentucky Air Guard, and has always been a mentor for me. He's probably instrumental in the reason I ended up with 2 stars. He was, I was the 3rd female in the Air Guard, I think, to be promoted to 2 stars.
So you're in the National Air Guard. And General Conway has visited our museum a lot. He's been in the Evansville area. He's a graduate of U of E. And our local National Guard area is named after him. And in Lexington, Kentucky, the museum is named after him. So he's a famous person. His sister had Carolyn's. It was a dress shop here. But he still lived in the Washington, D.C. area. So tell us about you walking around U of E with all those stars, and tell us what you said.
Well, I've never, well, the first social I attended after being appointed to the University Board of Trustees, he took me around and introduced me. He said together we had 5 stars. We were like ice and heart. He had, General Conway has 3 stars and I had 2, so.
That's a lot of stars. That's more stars than Evansville's got. We probably only have in Evansville, in the Evansville area, flag rank of very few people. Eric Schwinker, right outside of this room, died age 99. He was a 2-star general. General Marvin Evans was a 2-star general, was in charge of the reserves here. Admiral Kimmel was a 4-star general, got demoted to 2 stars from Henderson. Admiral Poindexter's from Washington, Indiana, and he got a little trouble with in '98 with the or in '88 with something in Vegas, and then I forget what it was, but he's still a great general or admiral. The other one is General Tuttle, and he was from Hatfield, Indiana. Those are only flag ranks around here, so you're very rare except for Conway, and you might know somebody else flag rank.
The Adjutant General of Indiana, I can't remember the years, was from Princeton. I'm thinking his last name was Mitchell.
Okay, we'll have to put him in our archives here. Mitchell from Vincennes, and he was adjutant general.
He was from Princeton, I think. And he was the adjutant general, right? Short guy, but just extremely nice. And I went to Indiana for something, and they treated me like royalty.
Yeah, so how many years were you in the service?
34.
34 years in the service, okay. Started in '68 and went till when?
2002.
2002 and retired then, because Conway retired probably about then or a little later.
A little earlier.
Yeah. So the University of Evansville had a ROTC program. They had it, I think, in World War II, and we had a little airport out by, right by Harrison High School on the other side, and they practiced landing out there before it was here, or they had an airport out there. And the Air Force was pretty big in ROTC in World War II, and they had these, what they call Quonset huts over at U of E, right where the new chapel is. And they had that for anybody in the Air Force. Mr. Yiser, his daughter was here today. He was Mrs. Yiser, but her dad was in the Air Force, and he was at U of E, and he got his things, all his degrees from there. But he lived in the Quonset huts. You had to pay $25 to get the water going, and you couldn't nail a picture on the wall. His wife would always talk about that. They were nice because they were cheap, and U of E students could go there, and if you were ROTC, you got to go there. So he lived his first 2 or 3 years there. The archaeology school has just done some digs there in the first 12 inches there, and found some artifacts, a lot of kids stuff, because there are a lot of kids hanging around there at that time. But you're on the board at University of Evansville along with your Admiral or General Conway too.
Right.
How long have you been on the board at U of E?
Oh gosh, probably 12 years.
So you know Mr. Petroskevich. He's the president there now. You know the previous 2 presidents, yeah.
Yes.
What do you think about U of E? You think it's a good school?
I do. I got my bachelor's degree there. It's a progressive school. I think the quality of education is outstanding.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then you're from Poseyville, and you have a lot of relatives and mothers in Evansville. What do you think the changes have happened here in the last 50 years in the Poseyville and Evansville area?
Well, Poseyville, I don't even recognize the names of people. While I'm here, I'm having lunch with the girls I graduated from high school with, which is going to be interesting. I think all the guys that were in our class have now died, but there are maybe 8 to 10 females still living, so I'll have lunch with them all.
Well, I'm holding you up for lunch. You're late, aren't you? I'm sorry about this.
It's next week.
Oh, next week. Okay, well, you're ahead of time. How long are you going to be in town? A week or 2?
I'll be here until the 30th.
Yeah. Well, I'd like Kathy or somebody to bring you over to the head of Deaconess, Mr. Shoy, and I want you to somehow talk to the nurses there. You're a real big accomplishment to be, and also maybe U of E to talk to some of the nursing students to see what led you along the way. It's a big accomplishment to be a general. Very, very few.
You know, it was just me, and I don't think that much about it. My family does. My mother called me the brigadier even after I got 2 stars. I told her she demoted me every time she did that. But in the nursing home, if they did something she didn't like, they'd say, "You wait till the brigadier comes, she'll straighten you out." So they were about half afraid to meet me for the first time.
They found out you're pretty nice, so didn't they?
I think so.
Yeah. What in the military? What do you think your major stresses were? Personnel, or travel, or assignments? What were the major stresses for personnel? Personnel, yeah, always human resources, yeah. What do you think the next generation needs to do, General Fairchild? We got young kids here today. What do you think we're missing, and what do you think we need to add to our next generation?
I belong to an organization in Washington called the Mission Readiness, and their emphasis is on, there are a large percentage, I've forgotten the percentage, but a large percentage of young people that won't qualify because they're overweight or they're unhealthy for whatever reason. So this mission readiness entirely admirals, generals, and you know, we'll sign a letter that they're sending out, or something that's gonna appear in the newspapers regarding, you know, what they can do and so forth.
Also, in regards to that's helping the younger ones that maybe have a high body surface area, that they're trying to decrease it and get into service. The cutoff right now is probably 21% or 18% BSI. It's pretty low. I wouldn't fit right now.
I'm not sure I would either.
Anyway, tell me about freedom and how we need to get the next generation more understanding of freedom.
Well, I think, you know, we went without the draft anymore, you know, we're at the mercy of
Volunteers.
Volunteers, exactly. I think we have to, you know, we have to move on, first of all, in our history, away from the Civil War and what it did, because there are a lot more frequent, recent happenings that they need to be aware of. And as well as the war part of the military, they need to understand the other part. You know, it's an education that you don't think about an education. You don't think in that way, but it certainly is that. And, you know, I've been to Germany, France, Liechtenstein, the Kentucky, when I was assistant AG for air, had an agreement. We were in the partnership program, and our partner was Ecuador. So I've been to Ecuador several times, and they took us to the Department of Defense, which was on the second floor of a building, and their, you know, that was their Department of Defense on that one floor.
Did you get to go to Galapagos when you were in Ecuador?
No.
Yeah, but you were in Quito and
Right.
saw what's been on there.
Went up in the mountains.
And saw South America. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much, General Fairchild.